Hi, welcome to One on the Page. I am Scott. This is the end of month wrap up for the month of March 2024. It's coming out a little bit late. It's been a busy month in April that I will talk to you about next month. But let's go ahead and get started with March because there are a lot of books. I finished 29 books in March. Uh, Particularly in April, I in the tail end of March, I got a little bit of laziness and procrastination that didn't really affect my reading, except I wasn't reading the things I was intending to read. I was reading a bunch of, I guess, fluff stuff. So I finished 29 books in March. Gonna go ahead and get started right now, ranking them from the worst to first. Book number 29 is The Rise and Fall and Rise Again of Claire Wilde by Natasha West. Claire Wilde is a retired actress who feels it's time to get back in the saddle, basically, with acting. So her agent hires a ghostwriter. The ghostwriter's name is Lily Gray. And basically, Lily Gray is going to stay with Clara, and they're going to do the whole ghostwriting thing so that she can get herself back in the news and stuff. I'm going to adjust this a bit. There we go. Um, Two of them become closer. It's a sapphic romance. There are a few of those in here. If you want to know why I read sapphic romances, I've explained it before. But again, these are very easy things to read, fluffy. I don't read heterosexual romances because generally the dude in the romance is an asshole. Um, and I don't read uh, gay romances because generally they're not my thing. I have read a few, but it, generally no. So I read sapphic romances. This one sucks mainly because of Clara's family. And also, there's Clara's family, which is absolutely horrible. That's one bad thing about sapphic romances, and probably a lot of romances, is that family members tend to be absolute garbage. And there's no resolution with this family. They were assholes. By the end of the book, they're still assholes. Haven't received any, uh, you know, karma in any way. And also in this book, it's too sitcom-y. It's too, I don't know, made for TV, mistaken hearing something and then not hearing the rest of it, and then showing up a moment too late or a moment too soon. Just really poor stuff. I don't believe I've read anything else by Natasha West based on this. If I have, or if I hadn't, I don't plan to read anything from her in the future. Now that may change. I have said that I would not read authors again, and I have to my detriment sometimes. But book number 28 is The Christmas Chronicles by Nigel Slater. This was a gift I got for Christmas from my daughter Robin. Uh, huge fan of Christmas. Love Christmas. Uh, this has recipes and the author's ruminations about Christmas. Uh, it looks like a good book. And as a book that looks like a good book, it will go up on my Christmas shelf. I have a guest room, which is Christmas all year round. This will go up in there. As far as content, uh, generally almost every recipe in here, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to make that. So, lovely book to look at. I don't know what else to say about that. Number 27 is A Holly Jolly Christmas by Emily Wright. Yes, I know these books are from March and I'm reading more than one Christmas book. Again, I love Christmas. This is also a sapphic romance. Holly comes back to her hometown 2 years after her brothers died. Her first love, Vicky, lives next door. Basically, a lot of it is just like her mother trying to get them together, and then Vicky trying to get together with her. And there's no chemistry between these two characters. There's nothing really poorly written about this book. There's just absolutely no chemistry at all with these characters. So, yeah, book number 27. Book number 26 is When the Past Finds You by Adrian J. Smith. Uh, Will, W-I-L, finds herself working for the stepmother of her best friend. She does not like the stepmother because the stepmother was very cold to her best friend after her father died. Uh, and she doesn't like her, but she's also attracted to her. This was one of those age gap ones and also inappropriate relationship ones. And the age gap is almost never going to bother me because one, it's fiction. There, I generally am like, if they're over 25, I don't particularly care how old the other character is if it's older than them. I mean, once you get, I guess, in the 70s or something, I guess I was like, oh yeah. But in a work of fiction, I'm like, if the younger character is over 25, I don't really care that much. There have been a few books I've read where the uh, younger character has been like 22 to 24. That can be iffy. It also depends on the age of the other one. I guess you could also look at the half the age plus 7. I haven't done any of that with these books. So the age gap doesn't bother me in here. I don't remember exactly how much older the stepmother is than Will, but I don't think it's a horrible amount. And I think Will is in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. I think late 20s. Uh, Neither of these characters are interesting characters to me. I happen to read. This is a first book, and there's another book that is written from the basically the stepdaughter's point of view about her own relationship that I read first. Enjoyed that one much more than this one. Also, I talked about inappropriate relationships. Those can be iffy for me. The age gap, I can kind of go like, if it's something that's pretty wide for me, I can go like, well, it's a work of fiction. But for me, some reason, inappropriate relationships, I tend to be a little bit more rigid on, I guess. And there have been books that I've read where there's been uh, inappropriate relationships and balance of power that I have been like, okay, yes, it's inappropriate, but I see how you get there, and I I accept it. This one is definitely abuse of power by the stepmother character, and I just didn't enjoy it. Adrian J. Smith is sometimes just hit or miss for me, and this one was just a miss. Number 25 is For Your Consideration by Amy Spalding. Nina works for a company that manages celebrity email. She meets with one of the clients. What was it? Ari Fox, and they develop a relationship. Nina hasn't been in a relationship for years because of bad breakup with her ex-girlfriend, and basically she shut down. She stopped writing scripts. She's basically uh, ghosted her friends too. Uh, so Ari Fox is perhaps a little too good as a character, but Nina more than makes up for it by being a character that somehow seems to get more awful the further in the book we are. Uh, yeah, uh, there's another book that I was thinking about reading by Amy Spalding, also set in Hollywood. I don't know that I'm going to read it because this one put me off so much. Maybe somewhere down the road where I am still just burning through my fluff books, I run out of ones. I may take it up, but I doubt it. Snowed In with Summer by Tiana Warner. Avery goes on a trip to Yukon that she was originally going to be going with her boyfriend, but they broke up. So she goes and she runs into an ex girlfriend, Summer, and they have to share a, what do they call it? I read this like at the beginning of March, a yurt, I think. Um, they have to share the yurt, and of course they get closer together. Uh, it, it was fine. The relationship wasn't particularly interesting. The situation wasn't particularly interesting. The characters weren't particularly interesting, but they were okay. Uh, Tiana Warner, haven't read anything. I have seen another book by her that's piqued my interest, but I haven't, and I believe it's also on Kindle Unlimited. I haven't chosen it yet because this one's kind of like, I don't know. I'm really not getting this set right. There we go. I think that's good. Uh, Number 23, a non-sapphic romance, is in a no romance at all, is A Prefect's Uncle by P.G. Wodehouse. It is Wodehouse's second published novel, published in 1903. It's set at a school. Don't remember the name of the school. I don't think it's St. Austin's or Riken. Uh, I know that there's Leicester House at that school. Basically, Gethren, a prefect at Leicester House, has his uncle, who happens to be younger than him, come and basically he messes stuff up for Gethren, kind of gets Gethren ostracized. There's a lot of cricket because it's a school story from Woodhouse. Of course, there's going to be lots of cricket. It was fine. Again, second published novel. Woodhouse has not reached his peak yet. It's not particularly humorous. It's way too much cricket, and it does improve on The Pot Hunters, which was his first book, in that in this book, Gethren is clearly the main character. There's a subplot, and there are other characters, many characters that we see, but unlike The Pot Hunters, I have no idea who the main character was in that. So, number 22, Not on the Table by Chloe Peterson. This is like a billionaire sapphic romance series. This is like book five in it. I have not read any of the previous four. It's about a group of friends who are all billionaires and they have their own relationships, generally with somebody who is much poorer than them. Taylor is at one of these friends' weddings, so if you don't read these in order, you're going to get spoiled on stuff that happened previously. I know it doesn't matter to me, but it might to you. She feels lonely, so she decides to go on a hike in a snowstorm, basically, and gets trapped and gets rescued by Wyatt, who's a novelist who has trauma issues, and they have a I wouldn't say a relationship. I mean, they eventually have a relationship, but they have a fling, I guess. And this deals with trauma quite a bit in here. I don't feel like it worked particularly well for me. I have no burning desire to read the rest of the books in this series. Not that I'm completely resistant against it. I just like, I don't feel I need to. Number 21, slightly better than When the Past Finds You at number 26, is Love Me at My Worst by Adrian J. Smith. Isla Walsh, the stepdaughter from the previous book, she's a teacher. She is having a lot of trouble recovering from a situation with her father dying when she was younger and issues with her stepmother, and then finding out that her stepmother and her best friend are together. She basically tries to put on a happy face and she plays jokes, and she plays jokes on the principal. What's the principal's name? Oh, Andre Murphy. Andre Murphy. and inappropriate relationship there. They get closer. But one, the pranks are very feel good pranks. So uh, it's like, haha, I make you feel good. Suck it. Um, I like Isla and Andre much better than I do like Will and the stepmother whose name I just can't remember. And I didn't write it down. Because if you know me, I have to write names down. I'm horrible at names, which is why I have my list. I look at the names and stuff on here. Uh, the relationship is inappropriate, but it works better than it does in the other book. There's it's inappropriate, but I don't think there's any abuse of power necessarily. There's also Andre has an ex-wife who it turns out is also a high school principal and quite the alcoholic. So I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. She has her own book also. I have not read. I don't plan on reading. I did not like that character in this book, so I don't feel the need to read any more about her. But it's okay. Number 22 is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This is the last book from my book club, my family's book club. Uh, at least right now, we're uh, on hiatus right now. Got people moving and summer vacation, and possibly some people may think that I'm too hard on the books they choose. Nobody has necessarily said that to me. Could be. This one was a decent book, but not anywhere near as good as I was expecting. Lenny goes to Alaska with her parents. They have to survive without any of the uh, amenities that they've had before, and Ernst, a Vietnam vet with PTSD, uh, doesn't do well here. I do the quote marks because I don't necessarily think that he has PTSD. And if he does have PTSD, I don't think that his issues necessarily have to do with the PTSD. I think he was an asshole before. Something that when we talked about in book club, everybody kind of glossed over. But I'm kind of like, okay, before he went to Vietnam, he was a 25-year-old man in a relationship with a 16-year-old. I know that's like the late 50s, 60s, or whatever, but still, 25, 16. I don't think the issues don't necessarily have to do with PTSD. I'm not saying that the PTSD didn't have anything to do with it at all, but I think if he hadn't gone to Vietnam, this might have still turned out the same way. Uh, I I had a Kristen Hanna book in my unhaul video that I was like, well, if I like this one, I guess I will possibly read the other one. I don't feel the need to read that other one. Not a horrible book, just a very mid book. And did I say that was book 20? That's book 20. Number 19 is Down to a Science by Haley Cass. Haley Cass is one of the sapphic romance writers that I generally enjoy everything they've written. There are a cat sneezing in the background. There are some books that I enjoy more than other, and I think I will talk about another book coming up that I wish there was more to it. Uh, but Down to Science, Ellie Beckett is a loner and socially awkward. I know you can't hear it, but that cat is really sneezing all over the place. Uh, she meets firefighter Mia in a bar. She falls in love with Mia, but is unable to tell her, and it's basically a novella. Her twin sister Riley is one of the main characters on the same page, which is probably my favorite Haley Cass novel. I don't enjoy this one so much. Mia has stuff going on her in her past that it just didn't work for me, and I don't want to get too much into it because it's spoilery. This was published before on the same page. There's information that you find out in here that will be a bit spoilery for On the Same Page. So, uh, my personal advice, if you're planning on reading both these books, just read On the Same Page first or only. This wasn't bad, but or maybe just read this one first because I think I enjoyed it less because I read it after On the Same Page. Number 18, Fly With Me by Andy Berg. Uh, Olive Murphy is trying to complete a bucket list for her brother. Her brother was in an accident, is basically in a vegetative state. And so she's trying to complete this bucket list of everything that he wanted to do, which means that she's flying to Disney World to participate in a marathon. While she's on the plane, when she's terrified of flying, she's a nurse, so she saves a man on the plane having a medical emergency. Meets the pilot. She and the pilot really have a connection. Then the pilot basically asks Olive to act as her girlfriend for basically promotional reasons because she's trying to become a captain, and of course, a female uh, in the airline industry may have a little bit more trouble being a captain. It was generally enjoyable. Big problem I have with this one: romances. Olive's family in here was awful. No resolution. No real confrontation. It's just everybody in the family is shitty to Olive, and that's all we get from the family. My God, what do you have, allergies? Come on, man. I think I said like 10 minutes ago that I don't think I will read something by Emily Wright again. Maybe I didn't. What was the book by Emily Wright? Oh, Holly Jolly Christmas. Maybe I did because that was one of my worst books this month. But I did read another book by her. It is at number 17, That Secret Something. Just as attracted to Rebecca, but that's her sister's best friend, and she is off limit for some reason. The two main characters are fine. The relationship isn't particularly overwhelming, but it's decent. The sister is extremely annoying, family member in a romance, and really put me off. It's a good novel, but it could have been much better if the sister hadn't been such a pain in the ass. Number 16 is The Complete Peanuts, Volume 2, years 1953 through 1954 by Charles M. Schulz. Uh, Not as fun as the first volume, a large part because Charlie Brown really starts becoming Charlie Brown, basically getting shit on by everybody. And we get Lucy being more Lucy. We still have Linus, who is a toddler, hasn't fully grown up yet. Get introduced to Pigpen. Uh, we still don't have some of the characters that we will know later, like uh, Patty in No Woodstock. Snoopy is still more a dog than something beyond it now. Uh, this is just one of those things where I read this entire 2 year span of comics in the span of maybe a month. Maybe that was too quickly because all the things that annoy me about Peanuts just came at me a lot more quickly. So if it had been the thing where I just read like one comic strip a day, probably would have ranked it higher. Number 15 is A Novel Beginning by Susan S. Meager. Kirsten, who has had to sell her dental practice because of an injury, attempts to write a novel through a writing program in which she's paired with Jonesy North. I like the interaction between the two characters, but honestly, it's perfectly her right. But Kirsten just won't shut up about the age difference, and it just kind of drags the novel down a little bit about it. I I like Jonesy particularly. I just kind of got to the point where it's like I can't, yeah, there's an age difference in it. I can't remember what the age difference is. I don't know if I wrote it down. Kirsten is in her mid 40s and Jonesy is in her late 20s. So there's probably like a 16, 18-year difference there. I think it's less than that actually, because I do remember going like, you're really putting a lot on this. I think it was a 14-year difference. So maybe Jonesy was 28 and Kirsten was like 42. And it's like, you're really making a big deal out of this. It's like, I mean, I could understand if there was like over a 20-year difference, but I'm kind of like, of course, maybe I've been reading too many of these books because I've gotten to the point where I've seen like, like a 25-year difference. I'm like, okay, in fiction, it was still a good book though. It wasn't a bad book, but man, age gap, come on. Number 14 is When You Least Expect It by Haley Cass. Caroline Parker is a divorce lawyer who takes on a client, uh, Hannah Dalton, who is the soon-to-be ex-wife of a former colleague of Caroline's. Caroline is a lesbian. Hannah is straight. um, maybe next month because I finished the month now, but particularly next month, maybe some more in this month. There's a lot of the uh, queer woman in the straight woman, which I don't mind, but sometimes they don't done well. I think this one is done fine. I like it. The problem I have with this, I'll put it, good novel, like the novel, generally like Haley Cass novels. The problem with this is that it's all told from Caroline's point of view. Now, there is a novella that I did read also that kind of tells it from Hannah's point of view, then also tells about the future of these two characters. And I kind of wish that this novel and novella had kind of been put together because I think it would have been better. I think I don't generally enjoy essentially dual narratives in books, but that's not necessarily the case in romances. In romances, I'm generally fine with it, and I think this book would have benefited from it. Number 13 is Mistakes Were Made by, I think it's Meryl Wilster. For some reason, I didn't write the author's name down here, but I think it's Meryl Wilster. It's pretty close. If it's not, I will correct it here, and I will also show the book to the side. Cassie, a college senior, goes to a bar and has a sexual tryst with an older woman, Erin. Uh, finds out the next day that Erin is the mother of one of her friends. I have seen this being recommended to me quite a lot on my Kindle Unlimited, and I didn't pick it up because I'm like, I'm not gonna like this. The whole age gap, the whole college senior, much older woman thing, and honestly, reading the first chapter, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like this. This book actually turned out really sweet for something that started with uh, these two women basically having sex outside a bar. Uh, but it turned out to be really sweet. Um, One of those books where, at least partly, I enjoy the family in the book. So, yeah, really good book. Uh, I am looking into another book from the author, but it's not on Kindle Unlimited, and I haven't seen enough reviews about it that make me feel comfortable paying for it. So maybe in the future. Cover Story by Rachel Lacey is another. She's one of my other favorite sapphic writers. Probably not so much as Haley Cass, but Natalie Keene is an actress who finds out the man who had stalked her is getting out of prison. So she and her team basically decide to hire a bodyguard, but they don't want to make the news of this person getting out of prison a big thing because she doesn't want that found out. That we're acting like that wouldn't already be known by people is a little bit ridiculous, but okay. So they hire Taylor, who is a bodyguard, to act as her new girlfriend. And again, this woman has been a bodyguard to famous people before. The fact that we're going to think that she hasn't been seen and recognized by uh, journalists or magazines or celebrity blogs or whatever, I don't think a lot of thought was put into that. But the relationship between the two of them is fine. I generally don't enjoy bodyguard tales because my thing about inappropriate relationships in a relationship where one of them is responsible for the safety of the other one, I'm kind of like but I generally like Rachel Lacey books. I do like this one. I just think it could have been better. Taylor was also a minor character in Stars Collide, which is my favorite Rachel Lacey book. Number 11 is Falls from Grace by Ruby Landers. Savannah Grace is a music star wanting to get back into the spotlight after spending time out of it after she's divorced her musician husband. She's raising their child. She basically has a songwriter come to her house to write songs with her. That songwriter, did I write his name down? I didn't write his name down. Uh, but he brings his best friend Bryn along because Bryn has a lot of stuff going on in her life. And for some reason, they decide to act like they're married so that it's okay that she came along. I don't get this part. Again, another thing where okay, Savannah has a team that should be like somebody should know this dude is not married. So I'm just kind of like, all right, I guess. Uh, but it was fine. There's a sequel coming up that I will probably read. I think it has to do with Savannah's sister. But I enjoyed it enough. I enjoyed the relationship between the two main characters. Thought the kid in here was cool. I think this was one of the earlier books I read in March, so I don't remember much about the other characters. The best friend is fine. Uh, oh, I am remembering more about it. It was an interesting turn. There is something happens with Bryn in it that I'm kind of like, okay, but it's one of those things. It's like suspension of disbelief. That's one of the ones where you just gotta like, okay, I guess. And if you can do that, you'd be fine. Say Cheese by T.B. Markinson and Miranda McLeod is number 10. Uh, T.B. Markinson tends to be a little too dry for me. Miranda McLeod, I have discovered because I've tried to read some of her writing where she's the only author, tends to be a little too cheesy and not showing a lot of restraint. I think the two of them together work pretty well. They balance each other well. They kind of get rid of the other person's worst traits. Ellie is saved in a flood by Angelina, and they spend the passionate night together. And then they discover the next day that Ellie is the woman who's coming to Angelina's family's cheese uh, making shop, who could possibly change the way they run the business. So Angelina's upset about that. A little bit of an age gap, not really much of anything there. Uh, it kind of points Ellie as this kind of like the corporate machine with no time for relationships, but that really doesn't last very long. The family can be a little bit too much, but they're not assholes, which I enjoy in these types of novels. Uh, but generally pretty good. I would not want to see this if it was written by just one of these authors, but the both of them together make it work. Book number 9 is Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. Alison Cochrane has written The Charm Offensive, has written Kiss Her Once for Me. I would rank Kiss Her Once for Me as a 5 star. The Charm Offensive, 4.5 star. This is a very good book. Bit of a disappointment as far as Alison Cochrane books for me. Uh, Basically, Logan and Rosemary used to be best friends. Then there was an event that caused them to split apart, and now they teach at the same school, but they do not like each other. Uh, their beloved former English teacher has cancer, terminal cancer, and he wants to go to Maine before he dies, and he wants the two of them to take them there. So basically, it's almost like a Hallmark like road trip. Alison Cochrane does very well at basically taking this like Hallmark like uh, story plot and just elevating it. And she does it here, just not as well as she could have. Honestly, the two characters don't work for me as well as the romances in the two previous books I talked about. It was fine. I will read those two books again. I don't know that this one is one that I will necessarily read again, but it's not one that will say, "Oh no, I'm never reading it again." But good book, disappointing book. Number 8 is Tempting Olivia by Claire Ashton. Olivia, who is a secondary character in Meeting Millie, which was an excellent book, is a family lawyer who gets hired to handle the divorce of Kate Lawrence, who happens to be an actress, happens to be Olivia's celebrity crush. Uh, they grow close together. Something that happens in here that doesn't happen in a lot of these books is that there's an inappropriate relationship and it's handled very well. And it makes sense for the characters, especially Olivia, because it would be a little bit strange for the character that I've been presented with in Tempting Olivia in Meeting Millie for her to just say, screw it, and dive into a relationship. Doesn't happen like that. I really appreciate it. Uh, Neither one of these characters are quite as interesting as Millie and, oh, I can't forget the other uh, character in it. Olivia is still very interesting, and it's nice to see a little bit of a different side to her. I'm wondering if there's going to be a third book because there's something that happens in the last chapter of the novel that presents two characters that we have met before in a new light, or if it's just like a little tag. I won't spoil it for you. I don't know that I buy it, but I would also say I'm interested in seeing how it's done, but I have read other books by this authors, and I think I can see how it's done because yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit down the road. Number 7 is a portrait of the artist as a young man by James Joyce. Good book. Didn't particularly enjoy it. It's about Stephen Dedalus, who basically is a stand-in for Joyce. Uh, when he a young boy till he gets older. I'm religious. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Uh, I don't know really. I read it because I want to read all of Joyce's fiction. So this one, The Dubliners, which I've already read, uh, Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, So I have now read two of them. The other two are going to be much more difficult to read. I think of what I know that this will probably be my least liked of the four books. I know I like Dubliners. I have started Finnegan's Wake. I don't know that I will enjoy it, but it's going to be a journey. But I didn't really particularly care for this one that much. Number 6 is The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy. Basically, there's a masked man or a secret agent, English secret agent, essentially, who is helping French aristocrats during the French Revolution. And he's being sought out, but nobody knows his identity. Move cat. Those are traps set for him. The interesting thing about this is that this is the first time I read it. I kind of went into this expecting an adventure novel about the escapades of Scarlet Pimpernel. Scarlet Pimpernel is not really the main character of this novel. It's Marguerite Saint Just, I don't know, uh, who is a French aristocrat who married an English lord, I believe, uh, Sir Percy Blakeney, and she is basically being blackmailed by somebody in order to save her brother, and it's almost all told from her point of view. It's very good, but go into the book with those expectations, not expecting like swashbuckling and uh, Three Musketeers type work. That's not what you're going to get. Number 5 is Plum Pie by P.G. Wodehouse. It is a collection of short stories. It has a Jeeves story in here. Uh, very good story. Uh, has Blandings Castle story. Has some golf stories, which I don't enjoy golf, but I generally enjoy Woodhouse's golf stories. Has an Ukridge story. I'm not a big fan of Ukridge, but and it does have some Drones Club stories, which are hit and miss. Overall, very good collection. Not his best collection, but as far as collections of his that aren't solely based on like one series, like Jeeves and Wooster or Golf Stories or Mr. Molitor, good. Number 4 is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. It concerns a visit by the devil and his entourage to the Soviet Union. Not particularly a main character in the story. The master appears like a quarter of the way, and Margarita maybe halfway through. I enjoyed it when those two characters were involved. I don't understand all of the inner workings as far as how it impacts Soviet Union at that time, but I did enjoy the storytelling. I don't think as a story as opposed to a, a literary story as a story just as like mind movie. I don't think it worked particularly well because the devil can do anything he wants, basically, and controls things however he wants. It kind of got boring after a while because it's like, yeah, I know you're going to do this with this person. Okay, move on. Once Margarita came in, I think I enjoyed the novel more though. Number 3 is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It was fine. I think I enjoyed it more before the Savage John came back. Uh, I enjoyed basically the inner workings of this brave new world and how that worked more than when the savage came back. And the savage came back, and his mother had been there before, but she got pregnant. And pregnancy is not a thing that happens around those parts. So she basically stayed away in shame. But then he comes back, and he's got all these tales from his mother. Mothers and fathers are also not a thing that happen. Children are basically incubated. uh, the character of John just didn't work for me. Basically, Huxley was manipulating him to be different characters based on what he wanted in the situations. Uh, Another one where it's like a social commentary story, a literary story, top notch. A mind movie story, eh, very good in the first half. As soon as Bernard and what's her name, Lena go on vacation, I do enjoy the chapter where John and the director are basically having a philosophical debate. That was interesting. This is just a split duality book for me. Literary novel, literary story. Number two is The Goodmans by Claire Ashton. I talked about Claire Ashton before. This is it's a romance, a sapphic romance that goes from sapphic romance to essentially a family drama. Abby is a doctor in a small English town. She's been in love with her best friend Jude. Uh, I forget what Jude is short for, but Jude's a woman for a long time. But since Jude is straight, uh, she's kept her love hidden. Uh, when Jude's brother announces his engagement, uh, Jude's boyfriend tries to propose for her, upsetting Abby and also causing Jude and her boyfriend to break up. And Jude overhears her brother telling his fiance that Abby's been in love with her, which Jude was not aware of, and that makes Jude think. And so you have the relationship between Abby and Jude, but then it kind of transforms into this family drama because of Maggie, who is Jude's mother. And Maggie is a very interesting character because she's almost seen as this harsh maternal figure in her home, but she's also this beloved woman, where she taught school and in the community. She's someone who loves Abby, who she essentially adopted as a daughter by proxy after Abby's mother died when she was in college. And she's very protective of Abby, but she also doesn't like that Abby's a lesbian because she thinks that queer people have it so hard in the world, and she thinks that it would be better for them if they lived a heterosexual life. So Maggie's a fascinating character. I mean, she's not necessarily against homosexuality, but she's against what being a homosexual might mean for a person as far as what the outside world does. And this was just, it was essentially two novels. You got the romance and then you got the family drama, and they both work very well and kind of weave in and out too. It's uh, just an excellent novel. I would have said before that Meeting Millie was my favorite Claire Ashton novel. I do think I would have to say right now it's The Goodmans. Just great novel. One of the few romances that I've given a 5 star to. And number one is Vengeance Planning for Amateurs by Lee Winter. Uh, Baker Olivia Roberts has had it with her awful exes taking advantage of her, so she plans to take vengeance on them, and she hires a hench person. Uh, and Dr. Margaret Blackwood, who is the owner of the bookstore that she sells some of her muffins and stuff at, takes that place. Olivia taking vengeance on people is ridiculous because Olivia is just like the nicest person ever. And Dr. Margaret Blackwood is what I have found to be a Lee Winter staple, the Ice Queen, who is actually uh, just a person who's really hurting inside. This was my first experience with Lee Winter. I've read other Lee Winter stories. I will spoil you that I've given at least one other Lee Winter book a 5 star. This was just excellent romance. It was fun, and I just Lee Winter, who used to be apparently an investigative journalist, is an excellent writer. Really enjoyed this. So that is 29 books that I read in March. Boy, wait till we get to April. That's going to take a long time. Uh, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you next time.